you're on the Intelligence Committee. There was
Sure.
quite a bit of news this weekend, some of it emanating from a Dan Bongino tweet that was cryptic, saying that
Very cryptic.
what he's looking at is the worst thing he's ever seen in his life. It shook him to his core. Dan Bongino is not a weak man, nor is he somebody who's
Probably can bench more than 135.
yeah, that's right. Well, what since you're on the Intel Committee, perhaps you have some insight into what was Dan talking about here.
My guess is the underlying intelligence of all this Russia collusion hoax is they dig into all of this and get the facts. We haven't been briefed specifically on that, but if you kind of read between the T lines, like Ratcliffe was on Maria a couple of days ago and alluded to once this intelligence comes out. So my guess is the depth of the depravity and the corruption of the Clinton, Obama, Russiagate scandal as they peel the onion back and start to analyze the lies that were perpetrated at the highest levels of our government. Now, think about this for a second. These are facts that are well known. The Hillary Clinton campaign paid for the Steele dossier. That Steele dossier, so this is 100% paid for by a campaign of your political opponent. That dossier was the basis of this intelligence report that was completely fabricated, and they tried to concoct the fact that the Trump campaign colluded and conspired with Russia to affect the outcome of the election. That was the mantra that the mainstream media sold to us for 2 years, all based on a lie, all perpetuated by a lie. So you have Obama, Clinton, Clapper, Comey all conspiring against the American people. I believe treasonously conspiring to concoct a lie based on intelligence that they promulgated that completely perpetuated a lie to the American people that the Trump campaign colluded and conspired with Russia. If you do a Democratic poll right now, and I've seen one recently, it's like 60% of Democrats still believe that Trump colluded and conspired with Russia in the last election in 2016. So 2 elections ago. They still believe that because for 2 years, we were fed this lie. I sat through these hearings as a member of the Judiciary Committee in the minority. Remember, Pelosi was the speaker at this time. Remember the Mueller report and Mueller coming before the Judiciary Committee? All of that perpetuated on a lie that was conspired between the highest levels of our government and the intelligence community that Trump colluded and conspired with the Russians. So I imagine Bongino is starting to see reports and info as they're digging in on this, as they're investigating this, because, oh, by the way, Tulsi Gabbard did a referral to the DOJ. So now FBI is investigating that referral for possible criminal charges as it relates to all this. So I don't know specifically what he was referring to, but I would imagine it's all of this surrounding all this finally years later. I mean, we're talking, 10 years ago that all of this happened? 10 years ago, all of this happened. Finally, the information is becoming before the American people. And finally, I hope and I pray that justice is going to be served, because the American people are sick and tired of deep state Democrats and deep state actors in our government doing this type of activity and nothing happens. Surveilling on their political opponents, using the FISA court, a secret court, to surveil on the Trump campaign. Nothing happens to those people. Yeah, some of them have been fired. FBI has done a good job of firing some of these people, but I can tell you there are still analysts that were involved in this that still work for the CIA, that are still part of the deep state, that all these people have to be flushed out. And if they lied, if they used their position to lie to the American people and lie to other officials, they should be held accountable for that.
Everybody keeps saying held accountable. And I suppose if you go through and you look at the breadcrumb trail, everything from John Ratcliffe suggesting that Hillary Clinton could be caught up in this net. And if you look at Dan Bongino's tweet, and then if you look at sort of what Trump's been posting on Truth Social, he's really been name dropping the Clintons and priming that pump quite a bit. And then you establish sort of what the Nunes report really says here, which is that the Hillary campaign worked with Russian spies to write the Steele dossier.
Correct.
They paid
and they
Russians.
paid them to. They paid them, yeah.
Yeah,
they paid them to do that.
So Bongino posted just one. Nobody paid attention to it. Only our show, but he posted just one link that was a link back to a article about how everything that is in this intelligence assessment, everything was a lie. That it was all the opposite. And in fact, the Russians wanted Hillary because she was a known asset. I mean, she's somebody that they could probably work with. They understand her. They didn't actually want Trump, That was the opposite of
Yeah, and they
what
had dirt on
everything
her
said.
too, and that was in the report that was recently released and made public. Was
Yes.
the Russians had dirt on her politically. So Putin actually wanted her to be president because he was going to then leverage her with all of the information that they had about her health and all these other issues to leverage her if she had become president and to get something out of her. So the Russians actually wanted Clinton, not Putin or not Trump, to be president. So it's just fascinating as you peel this onion back and get this information. I know that they're fervently working at the DOJ, but the American people for years have seen the corruption at the highest levels, and there has to be accountability.
Yes.
So I surely hope, and I know that they're working hard on that. I'm sure Pam Bondi and the DOJ is doing what they need to do. FBI is investigating it and getting all their information and ducks in a row before they possibly file charges. But all of these people lied to Congress too. But unfortunately, the statute of limitations has told for that. But there's not a statute of limitations on conspiracy. And clearly, all of these individuals were conspiring with a criminal intent to lie to the American people. The mainstream media perpetrates a lie. And to this day, you still have people in our country that believe that Trump colluded and conspired with Russia, when in fact, it was Hillary Clinton that colluded and conspired with Russian assets and paid them for this dossier to then take that and have the intelligence community lie about what was in it. This is just fascinating.
So what you've described there, Congressman, obviously has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt in all of these releases. Perhaps you already knew about it since you're on the Intel Committee, and you were most likely part. I don't actually know. Were you part of the House Select Committee on Intelligence that wrote the report?
No, I just got on this cycle, so I've only been on the committee since January.
Got it. Because that seems to be critical here. Many people assessing that perhaps that is the report that they tried to get in the Mar-a-Lago raid. Perhaps that was the missing documentation that they wanted to take back during the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid.
Yeah,
any thoughts on that? Do you have any insight on that?
That's the piece of this too. Keep perpetuating this. You've got these different actors who were still in the different apparatuses of our federal government in the deep state, now working against President Trump in the last election. The raid at Mar-a-Lago, what were they after? What information were they trying to get? It's just fascinating how deep this goes. And I hope they expose it. I hope these people go to jail, and they have to, or the American people are never going to have trust and faith in the FBI, the intelligence community, the DNI, all of these different apparatuses, because we only get what they tell us. The intelligence committee can't go to the CIA. I mean, we could go and demand information, but that doesn't mean they have to give it to us. So we only get information that's provided. Now, we have oversight authority if we want to subpoena these people and delve into different issues, but they can easily keep Congress in the dark, even the intelligence community, of what's really going on, because they just don't give them the information. So I hope Bongino and the FBI and all these people root out the corruption at the highest levels, and everybody should be held criminally accountable for it.
Nothing that you've said is even controversial, or all of it is incontrovertible.
And it's all fact. It's all been packed up by facts.
Your detail about the Steele dossier, it should be a far bigger scandal on the mind of the American people, I think, than it is. But what you've described there is what Stephen Miller calls a seditious conspiracy. Tulsi Gabbard has used the word traitorous, and traitorous, by definition, is working with a foreign power in order to usurp power and usurp the will of the American people. And that definitionally is what Hillary Clinton did. You just described it. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I use the word treason. I mean, it's and that's that's a crime you can charge under the Constitution. I don't think it's been charged since the days of, after the Revolutionary War and all of that kind of thing, but it's certainly a charge that you could bring under the Constitution. Think about the timeline. Trump is coming into office. He just won. And you have these people undermining the current president, the incoming president of the United States. Flynn had to deal with all of the different corruption as it relates to this. This is that timeline of all of this going on. So absolutely, you are undermining your country, the president, your duty under the Constitution. So I sure hope that there's significant ramifications of this, and I hope the American people get to see all of it. Yes. I hope Tulsi, Ratcliffe, Congress doesn't have the ability to declassify, but the president and Ratcliffe and Tulsi do. So I hope that once they do the investigation, once they've dotted their I's and crossed their T's, they release all this information so the American people can truly see. Now, the mainstream media is not going to talk about it, but at least the American people can see for themselves what was really going on during this time.
Congressman, given the fact that you probably are privy to for more information than is publicly available, and you are on the Intel Committee, who would you suggest be gone after the most severely for these crimes? Do you think that it's going to be Comey and Brennan and Clapper? Do you believe that Barack Obama will have presidential immunity?
Yeah, Obama's going to hide behind that. But I think it's, Comey, Clapper, the individuals that conspired, whether Clinton was implicated in that or not. I assume she was, just by virtue of the fact that they paid for the dossier. The campaign then fed that to Comey and Clapper and the intelligence community, and then they used that as a basis not only to lie to the American people, but then to get warrants on Trump officials, Trump individuals, and spy on American citizens without a real warrant, because they used the FISA court to do it so they could hide their actions of what they were doing. So I would just, your top of the spear there is Comey and Clapper, because they were the head of the FBI and the agencies at that time. So yeah, if you could go after, if there are facts to support, which I would assume based on all of the information we have at this point, to support a charge there, absolutely the DOJ needs to charge them.
So this is a real question that I have, and a final question on this topic, Congressman, is how do you get a conviction in a DC jury? It's going to be, of course, the opposite effect of what happened for J6ers, right? When no matter what, you were going to get a guaranteed conviction in a Washington, DC jury pool selection that is a city that voted 2% for Donald Trump. How are you, and most of the people are going to be working for these agencies that are trying to be prosecuted. How would you creatively get the hell out of DC so that you could properly charge these crimes?
Yeah, that's a great point. And some of this now, the Mar-a-Lago raid and that involvement, if some of these people were involved in that somehow, that happened in Florida. So Florida would have jurisdiction, so you could get a Florida jury for those crimes. But you bring up an excellent point. DC is the deep state, and you've got, it's like 85%, 90% registered Democrat there. You are not, these people are obviously not going to get a fair trial, just like the J6ers did not get a fair trial in DC. So they're going to have to think about the venue issues. They're going to have to think about conflict issues. They're going to have to obviously try to work through that from a legal basis and the best venues to bring those different crimes. But you obviously also have to charge them in the jurisdictions where the crime was committed. But if it was a conspiracy, wherever they were during that period of time, you could bring those crimes and they would have jurisdiction.
It kind of puts in stark relief why President Obama just moved a block away from the White House. You know, you just moved to Colorama, right? And you never have to.
Downtown New York City.
Yeah, that's right.
San Francisco.
First president who never left, you know? Yeah. It's very interesting. Okay, so President Trump was just live at a press conference, and we covered the tail end of it. He was asked, obviously peppered with all these questions about Epstein, and I don't like the media turning Epstein into the new Russiagate. I think that's what's actually happening. But the best way to get out from under that rock is obviously full disclosures. Would you and your committee be interested in talking with Ghislaine Maxwell? Where's your stance on how the government should address this issue?
Well, that's the Intelligence Committee. If a committee talks to her, it should be oversight of judiciary, because it's of a criminal nature and they have jurisdiction over those issues. I think all of this information should be made public as long as they're protecting the victims. Even if those victims are not underage now, but they're adults, they still have rights to be protected as a victim. They probably don't want a big X and a marker on them as being involved in all of this for a variety of reasons, for safety reasons, for fear of retribution, all of these different things. So you have to protect the victims' rights as much as possible. But I would vote to release, if we ever get to vote on this, I would vote to release whatever we can. Congress shouldn't be standing in the way of that. I assume that the DOJ is fervently working on whatever they're trying to release. You've got the DOJ that just recently met with Maxwell. And some article I read said there's 100 different people that she is implicated. So I hope that the facts come before the American people. Obviously, if it's being investigated, obviously it's confidential during that period of time. But the American people want answers. Republicans want answers. I don't think we should not be working in Washington because we're afraid of the Epstein files coming out. Obviously, if they had stuff against President Trump, that would come out a long time ago. So I'm not really concerned about it from that aspect. And the mainstream media is obviously trying to hang this around his neck, that there's some huge conspiracy with him as it relates to Epstein. And they're just trying to distract from all this Russiagate information. These guys got Pulitzers. They got prizes for the Russiagate hoax, when are they going to give that back? It's just fascinating how the mainstream media operates.
A follow-up that I've been dying to ask, because I've been wanting to have the right member of Congress on to ask it. You were just talking about subpoenaing the CIA, and they don't have to give you the truth, but so many intelligent people have been on this program talking about this and saying, if there was going to be a clandestine agency that was working closely with Epstein, it would be the CIA. That's why you would have an island in international waters. There's an obvious opportunity for a clandestine-facing agency, and why so many world leaders were ensnared in so much of this op. Would you be down with a subpoena in the CIA to see what their Epstein files are?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can request that as a member of the committee. The chairman would have to do that, but I would certainly support getting the information. Certainly, we represent the American people, and we're on the Intelligence Committee and have the opportunity to request that. I would assume that the CIA is working with the FBI on all of this. Mm-hmm. I don't know that to be a fact or not, but that is certainly something that we could request.
Yeah, it's like something, it just seems like there's a missing piece there, and everybody's sort of worked on divulging what they know about Epstein. But the more you go back into the background, the more you look into the op, the more it seems like if it was an intel op, and so many smart people smarter than me saying it was, then that would be the agency, and they've been very quiet on it. And so, yeah, be interesting to know, I suppose.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman, final question for you on the status of something big going on in Florida that has missed a lot of the news cycle, but it's the Ryan Routh trial. Ryan Routh is representing himself. So such a strange thing that happened with President Trump's assassination attempt here in Florida. Arguably, maybe even a scarier one than in Butler, given the fact that there were less agents there. It was less of a public-facing event. It was in private. This guy was clearly premeditated. He was trying to work with the Ukrainian military to get armaments or assassins across our border. He was clearly connected in very creepy ways to human smugglers, and just so much more about Ryan Routh that we don't know. This trial's going on in Florida. This has been a major frustration. Have you seen anything on either Ryan Routh or Matthew Thomas Crooks that could illuminate for us what these ops actually were against the president's life?
Yeah, and you're right. There's, of course, mainstream media is not going to talk about the fact that there were 2 assassination attempts on President Trump's life, and we know zero about the background of either one of these individuals, zero about their motive, especially the Butler shooting suspect, because he's not here anymore. Of course, nobody else is talking. FBI is not talking. A huge failure by Secret Service that a guy gets on a roof and nobody sees him, and he isn't taken out before he gets a shot off and kills individuals at the rally and almost kills our president. Yeah, those are things that I would love to get more information on. I don't know if for some reason it's classified, but it's certainly things that we could request. I would imagine the Judiciary Committee or the Oversight Committee has made requests as it relates to that, because it's obviously more criminal in nature. But you're right. It's frustrating when you have these huge events and then you know nothing about the background of these individuals, the information about these individuals. Maybe I'll query that and see if we can get some answers.
That'd be great. I mean, this is the DOJ's own filings saying don't worry, he's just like, because he was traveling to Ukraine, nobody knows how or why, but since he was in Ukraine so often, he was just working with the Ukrainian military to get an RPG to shoot down Trump's plane. This is in black and white. This is the DOJ's own filing, which is insane. Like, what an insane timeline that we're living in. And everyone just seems to brush it by, but not this program. So
yeah, I don't know how you would get that into the country without Border Patrol seeing that, but it's fascinating times that we live in.
It was the Biden era, so I guess that would.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah, they weren't looking at the southern border
then. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us. Everybody follow Greg Stubbe.
All right, I got to do that bench press. I'll have to post that this week.
Oh, that would be, if we were the inspiration for that, it'd be great. If more members of Congress, I think it'd be good for young men in the country to see which party is actually jacked. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, follow Congressman Greg Stubbe right here. 117,000 Americans already do fight with the people who are fighting for us. Thank you, Congressman.
Good to see you, buddy.